What would you do if the biggest day of your life was hijacked by someone determined to control it? Anna thought her wedding was about love and new beginnings, but instead, it became a battle for her independence. Will she find the courage to take back her voice and reclaim her future? Before we dive in, let us know, what time are you listening to this, and where are you? Drop a comment below. We'd love to hear from you. The small town of Magnolia Springs, Georgia was alive with the gentle hum of spring. Soft rays of sunlight filtered through the blooming magnolia trees, their petals scattering like confetti across the manicured lawns of the Rosewood estate. This was the venue for Anna's wedding, a place brimming with elegance, a perfect facade of happiness that masked the storm brewing in her chest. Anna stood near the edge of the garden, adjusting the delicate lace sleeve of her gown. The fabric felt heavy against her skin, or maybe it was the weight of the day itself. Her eyes darted to the guests milling about, sipping champagne and exchanging pleasantries. Laughter echoed, bouncing off the stone walls, but none of it reached her. Every detail of this day had been planned to perfection, yet Anna couldn't shake the feeling that she didn't belong. And then there was Judith. Judith Kingsley stood near the fountain at the center of the garden, commanding the space as if it were her own stage. Her emerald dress shimmered in the sunlight, the pearls around her neck reflecting her unyielding authority. Her sharp eyes scanned the crowd, landing briefly on Anna, and in that fleeting moment, Anna felt it. The cold, piercing judgment she had come to know so well. It was as though Judith could dissect her every flaw with a single glance. Anna shivered, her hands tightening around the bouquet she held. The voice in her head whispered its familiar refrain. "They think you're not enough. Judith thinks you're not enough." She had spent months bending over backward to meet Judith's impossible standards. She'd agreed to every suggestion, smiled through every criticism. But no matter how hard Anna tried, Judith's disdain seeped through. Subtle glances at Anna's modest engagement ring, offhanded remarks about her family's lack of financial contribution. It wasn't the words themselves that hurt most. It was the intent behind them. "Anna, darling," Judith's voice, sharp and sweet like honey laced with glass, pulled Anna from her thoughts. She turned to see her mother-in-law beckoning her with a practiced smile that never quite reached her eyes. "We're about to start the speeches. Come along, dear. Everyone is eager to hear your perspective." Anna's stomach knotted. Judith didn't want her perspective. She wanted submission. She wanted Anna to stand before the crowd and express polite gratitude, to publicly acknowledge the power Judith wielded over this day and over Anna's life. As Anna made her way to the small platform at the center of the garden, she felt the weight of every gaze on her. The manicured lawn, the fairy lights twinkling in the trees, everything she had envisioned for this day now felt like a gilded cage. She took the microphone, her hands trembling slightly, and scanned the sea of faces. Some were warm, others curious, and then there were those, like Judith's, that seemed to hold silent expectations of her failure. She drew a deep breath. "Good evening, everyone," she began, her voice steady despite the chaos inside her. "I just want to take a moment to thank each of you for being here tonight. It means the world to me," and Judith's light laugh cut through her words like a knife. "And of course," Judith interjected, stepping forward with effortless poise, "we must acknowledge how fortunate Anna is to have joined a family like ours." Her voice dripped with feigned kindness, but the undertone was unmistakable. A ripple of laughter spread through the crowd. Anna felt her cheeks flush, heat creeping up her neck. Judith turned back to the guests, gesturing to the opulent surroundings with a casual wave. "It's a good thing we could handle everything, isn't it, Anna? Otherwise, I'm not sure what kind of wedding we'd be attending today." The sting of her words was immediate, like a slap Anna hadn't seen coming. The crowd murmured, some chuckling awkwardly, others whispering behind their champagne glasses. Anna gripped the microphone tighter, her knuckles white against the polished metal. She forced a tight smile, but inside, she was crumbling. She caught Eleanor's gaze from the edge of the crowd. Her best friend stood there, steady and unflinching, her expression a silent reminder of Anna's strength. Eleanor nodded just once, and the lifeline was enough to keep Anna from breaking entirely. Judith turned to her, the faintest smirk playing on her lips. "Anna, I'm sure you'd agree. This day wouldn't have been possible without the Kingsleys." Anna felt her voice stick in her throat. She lowered the microphone and stepped down from the platform, her vision blurring with the sting of humiliation. The voices around her grew muffled, the laughter and chatter blending into a single suffocating noise. She felt as though the ground beneath her had shifted, leaving her untethered. She retreated to a quiet corner of the garden, away from the crowd and their whispers. The air was cooler here, the scent of jasmine drifting on the breeze. She leaned against the stone railing, her breath coming in shallow gasps. How had it come to this? How had she allowed herself to be reduced to a guest at her own wedding? Her reflection caught her eye in the glass of a nearby window. She stared at the woman looking back, her gown pristine, her makeup flawless, yet her eyes betrayed her. They were filled with a mix of anger and hurt, but also something new, something unexpected, defiance. She straightened her shoulders. Judith might have taken the spotlight tonight, but she would not take Anna's voice. Not anymore. This wasn't just about a wedding or a family's expectations. This was about her identity, her worth, her future. For the first time, Anna felt a flicker of determination burn through the haze of doubt. She turned back toward the glowing lights of the reception, the jasmine-scented air filling her lungs. The road ahead would not be easy, but Anna knew one thing for certain. She would no longer stand idly by while someone else dictated her story. And so, with her head held high and her resolve newly planted, Anna walked back into the fray. This was her moment, and she wouldn't let anyone take it away. The garden venue glowed with string lights draped across blooming hydrangeas, the setting every bit as enchanting as Anna had envisioned, at least on the surface. Yet as she stood by the catering table, clutching the revised menu in trembling hands, the magic had all but vanished. Her face turned pale as her eyes skimmed the elegant script listing lobster thermidor, imported caviar, and a cake so elaborate it resembled a miniature Versailles. These were not the dishes she had chosen. Anna turned to a server, her voice taut with disbelief. "Who authorized these changes? This isn't the menu I signed off on." The server hesitated, a flicker of unease crossing his face before he responded with a polite but detached tone. "Mrs. Whitmore said these were your preferences. She insisted everything was already approved." Anna's grip on the menu tightened as his words sank in. Of course, Judith. The woman didn't just overstep, she crushed every boundary Anna had worked so hard to establish. Anna's stomach churned as her gaze swept across the garden. The opulence she had once been proud of now felt foreign. And then she noticed the guests, dozens of unfamiliar faces mingling among the crowd, faces she didn't recognize from the guest list she had meticulously curated. Socialites, business acquaintances, and powerful figures, people who thrived in Judith's world of image and influence, but had no place in Anna's carefully planned celebration. Her heart pounded as she fumbled for her phone, scrolling through the guest list. Name after name leapt out, people she hadn't invited, hadn't even considered. Judith's fingerprints were all over it, her manipulation seeping into every corner of what was supposed to be Anna and Daniel's day. The garden no longer felt like a magical setting. It felt like a stage, Judith's stage. Anna weaved through the clusters of guests, her heels clicking against the stone pathways as her frustration boiled. When she spotted Daniel near the bar, laughing with an old college friend, a flicker of hope briefly pierced her anger. He would understand. He had to. "Daniel," Anna said, tugging him aside. Her voice wavered but carried a sense of urgency. "We need to talk." The warmth in his face faded as he noticed her expression. "What's wrong?" "It's your mother," Anna began, her voice trembling despite her effort to sound calm. "She's changed everything. The menu, the guest list. She's completely disregarded what we planned. This was supposed to be our wedding, Daniel, but it's turning into her show." Daniel sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Anna, come on. It's not that big of a deal. My mom just wants what's best for us." Anna stared at him, stunned. "The best for us? She's treating me like a guest at my own wedding. This isn't her day, it's ours." Daniel frowned, his voice dropping to a weary tone. "Why do you always have to make things so complicated? She's trying to help, Anna. Can't you just let it go?" The words hit her like a slap, each syllable sharp and stinging. She blinked, her heart sinking. "Let it go?" she echoed, her voice trembling with anger. "This is my wedding, Daniel, ours. Do you even care how I feel?" He avoided her eyes, his silence speaking louder than any response could. Then, almost dismissively, he said, "What do you want me to do, Anna? Cancel everything and start over, because that's not happening." Anna's stomach twisted as she stared at the man she was about to marry. He wasn't standing with her. He wasn't standing at all. He was content to let his mother dictate their lives, even if it meant erasing Anna in the process. She stepped back, her throat tightening. "I just want you to care," she said softly, the words barely audible. And with that, she turned and walked away, her chest heavy with the weight of realization. She was on her own. The rehearsal dinner was held in the grand dining hall, a space that seemed to radiate Judith's influence. Gold accents adorned the walls, towering floral arrangements loomed over the tables, and the soft glow of chandeliers bathed everything in opulence. Guests, most of whom Anna didn't even know, filled the room, their laughter and chatter blending into a din that felt oppressive. Anna sat at the far end of the table, the delicate crystal of her champagne glass cool against her trembling fingers. Judith, seated at the head of the table in a deep emerald gown that glimmered with authority, commanded the room effortlessly. This wasn't a dinner to celebrate Anna and Daniel, it was Judith's victory lap. When the speeches began, Anna saw an opening, a small chance to reclaim some semblance of control. She rose from her chair, holding her glass aloft. Her voice was steady, but tinged with vulnerability. I just want to say how grateful I am to everyone here for joining us to celebrate. It's been a journey planning this day, but it's all been worth it because of the love and support we've felt from so many of you. She barely had a moment to take a breath before Judith's laugh cut through the room, sharp and deliberate. Well, we're all grateful too, Anna, Judith said, her voice sweet with mock sincerity. It's not every day a young woman gets to marry into a family like ours. I suppose congratulations are in order for managing to upgrade your life so spectacularly. The words hung in the air like a slap. Laughter rippled through the room, some polite, others genuine, but all of it slicing through Anna's composure. Her cheeks burned as if Judith had poured acid on her, reducing her to an opportunist in the eyes of everyone present. Anna set her glass down carefully, her trembling hands threatening to shatter the delicate stem. She excused herself, her voice tight with barely contained emotion. The room blurred around her as she hurried outside, the weight of humiliation pressing down on her chest. The cool night air hit her skin as she stepped into the garden. The soft glow of the dining hall lights felt like a taunt, a reminder of the world she couldn't seem to fit into. Anna wandered to the edge of the fountain, the gentle trickle of water, the only sound as tears spilled down her cheeks. How had it come to this? How had the most important day of her life been hijacked by a woman who seemed to live to humiliate her? She wrapped her arms around herself, the weight of the evening pressing down like an iron shroud. Anna? The voice startled her. She turned to see Eleanor approaching, her face a mixture of concern and quiet determination. Without waiting for an invitation, Eleanor stepped closer, placing a comforting hand on Anna's shoulder. I saw what she did in there, Eleanor said, her voice steady but tinged with anger. She thinks she can humiliate you and get away with it. Anna wiped at her cheeks, trying to muster a brave face. It doesn't matter, she said, her voice trembling. She's won, she always does. No, Eleanor said firmly, her tone softening as she met Anna's gaze. She only wins if you let her. Don't let her decide your worth, Anna. She doesn't get that power. Remember, you've built this life. You made this happen, not her. Anna stared at Eleanor, her words stirring something deep within her. Slowly, a flicker of resolve began to take root. The fight wasn't over, not yet. The evening air felt heavy, cloaking Anna in a blanket of tension as she stepped into the backyard. The soft glow of string lights draped across the hydrangeas did little to soothe the storm brewing inside her. She sat down on a wooden bench near the flowers, her hands pressed together as though trying to hold herself together. The faint hum of laughter and conversation from inside the house only deepened her frustration, reminding her of the control Judith wielded over every aspect of the wedding. Anna, came Eleanor's voice, calm yet piercing, cutting through the stillness. She approached with the sure-footedness of someone who had seen far too much and knew exactly how to confront it. Sitting beside Anna, she studied her friend with perceptive eyes. You've been biting your tongue a lot lately, Eleanor began, her tone gentle but probing. That's not like you. Anna exhaled, her shoulders slumping as if the weight of Judith's interference was finally too much to bear. It's hard, Eleanor. Judith has a way of making you feel small, like nothing you do will ever be enough. And Daniel, he just brushes it off, like it's not a big deal. Eleanor tilted her head, her sharp eyes narrowing. Anna, I've known you for years. You've never been the type to let anyone walk all over you. So why now? Anna shook her head, her voice barely above a whisper. Maybe it's just easier to stay quiet, to not make waves. I don't want to start a war the day before my wedding. That's exactly what Judith is counting on. Your silence, Eleanor said, folding her arms across her chest. Her words landed with the force of a hammer. If you don't stand up to her now, what's going to stop her from controlling everything after the wedding? Your career, your marriage, your life? The weight of Eleanor's words hit Anna like a jolt of electricity. She had spent so much time trying to appease Judith, trying to avoid conflict, that she hadn't considered the long-term implications. She stared at her hands, twisting the delicate engagement ring around her finger. Was this how the rest of her life would feel? A series of small sacrifices until there was nothing left of her own identity? Eleanor leaned closer, her voice softening. Do you remember the hospital gala you planned a few years ago? The one everyone said was too big a project for you to handle alone? Anna's lips curved into a faint smile at the memory. They told me I'd never pull it off, that it was impossible. And yet you planned every detail. It was a massive success, Eleanor said, her tone firm but encouraging. This wedding? You've done the work, you've paid for it, you've built it. Judith may want to take the credit, but don't you dare let her take away what you've accomplished. A flicker of strength ignited in Anna's chest, but it was quickly overshadowed by frustration. I've tried, Eleanor, she said, her voice trembling. I've tried to talk to Daniel about how much it hurts when she undermines me. All he ever says is, that's just how she shows love, you need to accept it. Eleanor's jaw tightened, her lips pressing into a thin line. Anna, she said after a moment, her tone steely, love doesn't belittle you. Love doesn't force you to sacrifice your dignity just to keep the peace. You deserve more than that. The words pierced through Anna's defenses, lodging deep in her heart. She bit her lip, fighting back tears. Eleanor placed a hand on her shoulder, her touch steadying. There's something you need to know, Eleanor continued, her voice darkening. Judith has done this before. Anna's head snapped up, her eyes wide. What are you talking about? Eleanor hesitated, then sighed. Daniel's older brother. He was married once. Anna blinked, the revelation leaving her breathless. I thought he was always single. No, Eleanor said grimly. He married a wonderful woman, someone Judith decided wasn't worthy of their family. She didn't scream or fight. She didn't make a scene. She just chipped away at the marriage little by little until it fell apart. The world seemed to tilt on its axis as Anna absorbed Eleanor's words. What happened to her? She asked, her voice barely audible. She left, Eleanor said simply. Judith made sure she felt like she didn't belong. That's what Judith does, Anna. She doesn't destroy because she hates. She destroys because she's terrified of losing control. Eleanor reached into her purse and pulled out a photograph. It was an old wedding photo of Daniel's brother, his bride beaming at his side. Anna's breath caught as she noticed something scrawled in Judith's neat handwriting on the back, a mistake that needed correcting. Anna's fingers tightened around the photo, her knuckles white as anger and disbelief coursed through her. The implications were clear. Judith's manipulation extended far beyond petty wedding details. It threatened the very foundation of Anna's future. Later that evening, Anna wandered back into the house, her thoughts swirling. She passed through the dining room where laughter and conversation buzzed around the candlelit table. Judith's voice rose above the hum, commanding as always. Of course, Judith was saying, her tone laced with smug satisfaction. I've already taken care of everything. After the wedding, I'll make sure their finances are in order, and Anna will learn how we do things in this family. She'll have plenty of guidance. Anna froze in the doorway, her stomach churning. Judith spoke with such casual confidence, as though her domination was inevitable. The words wrapped around Anna like chains, heavy and suffocating. But instead of retreating into despair, Anna felt something shift within her. The weight of her fear gave way to something else, anger. Eleanor's words echoed in her mind. Don't let her decide your worth. Anna clenched her fists, her resolve hardening. Judith thought she had won, thought she could mold Anna into someone who would silently submit to her whims, but she was wrong. From across the room, Anna's gaze locked on Judith. For the first time, she didn't feel small under the older woman's scrutiny. Instead, she felt a surge of clarity, of purpose. Baangi min setang, Anna whispered to herself, her eyes narrowing. Nung ba da chonam ngoy. With that, she turned and walked away, determination radiating from every step. Judith may have started this fight, but Anna would finish it. The Carter family dining room hummed with the clinking of silverware and muted conversations. Beneath the surface, however, tension coiled like a viper ready to strike. Judith, seated at the head of the table, radiated authority. Her every gesture, lifting her wine glass, gesturing to a server, or offering a pointed smile, seemed calculated to remind everyone exactly who was in charge. Anna sat near the far end of the table, her fingers twisting the hem of her napkin. She could feel Judith's gaze sweep across the room, searching for her next opportunity. It didn't take long. "So, Anna," Judith began, her voice slicing through the chatter. She tilted her wine glass, swirling the dark liquid lazily. "Have you finally decided on the floral arrangements, or should I step in again to ensure we don't embarrass ourselves in front of our guests?" The words were a dagger, and the murmurs around the table sharpened their edge. Anna's cheeks flushed, but she forced herself to meet Judith's gaze. "I finalized everything with the florist," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor of frustration beneath. "The arrangements will reflect the simple, elegant style I envisioned." Judith let out a soft laugh, loud enough to ensure everyone heard. "Simple? Well, that explains a lot." The laughter that followed was faint but audible, like a crack in Anna's resolve. Her eyes flicked to Daniel, seated beside her, but he wouldn't meet her gaze. Instead, he shifted uncomfortably and took a long sip from his glass, the silence from her fiancé louder than Judith's words. Anna's hands clenched in her lap, her nails digging into her palms. She had spent months enduring Judith's cutting remarks, trying to prove she belonged, trying to avoid confrontation for Daniel's sake. But every word, every slight was like a stone added to the weight pressing on her chest. Finally, she spoke, her voice trembling but resolute. "With all due respect, Judith, this is my wedding. I understand that you want everything to be perfect, but I have a vision for how I want this day to be. I'd appreciate it if you could trust me to handle it." Judith's smile didn't falter, but her eyes darkened. She leaned forward slightly, her tone dropping to a dangerous low. "Your wedding, Anna? Let's not forget who's footing the bill for this so-called vision of yours. The only reason this event is even happening is because of this family's generosity." The comment struck like a slap, and for a moment, Anna couldn't breathe. She forced herself to straighten her shoulders, her voice gaining strength as she replied, "That's not entirely true. I've contributed significantly to this wedding, more than you might realize." Judith's expression faltered just for a second before her mask of composure slipped back into place. "Significantly," she repeated, her voice dripping with mockery. "Let's be realistic, dear. Whatever you've contributed is a drop in the ocean compared to what we've invested. And if you think for 1 second that you can dictate how this family handles things, you're sorely mistaken." Anna opened her mouth to respond, but Judith wasn't finished. Leaning back in her chair, she delivered the final blow with chilling precision. "If you keep pushing, Anna, don't expect Daniel to stand by you. He's always been a loyal son. I'd hate to see that loyalty tested." The threat landed like a punch to Anna's gut. She looked to Daniel, silently begging for him to refute Judith's words, to take her side. But he only stared at his plate, his silence a deafening confirmation. Anna's chair scraped against the floor as she rose abruptly, her composure cracking. "Excuse me," she said tightly, her voice barely above a whisper. She could feel every eye on her as she left the table, but she didn't care. Tears pricked her eyes, but she refused to let them fall until she was out of sight. Later that evening, Anna sat alone in her room, the door closed against the muffled hum of the house below. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand, the glow of the screen catching her attention. It was an email from the wedding planner. As she read through the message, her stomach dropped. The color scheme had been changed to Judith's preferred palette. The seating chart was completely rearranged to accommodate Judith's socialite friends. Even the decorations had been replaced with gaudy, ostentatious displays that erased every trace of Anna's original vision. Her hands trembled as she scrolled through the list of changes. Tears blurred her vision, and she sank onto the edge of the bed, burying her face in her hands. It wasn't just the wedding, it was everything. Every decision, every moment she had worked for had been hijacked by someone who saw her as nothing more than an inconvenience. A soft knock at the door startled her. Wiping her eyes, she called out, "Come in." The door opened to reveal Eleanor, her expression a mixture of concern and quiet determination. She stepped inside, closing the door behind her, and sat beside Anna. "I thought I might find you here," she said gently. Anna shook her head, her voice thick with emotion. "I don't know what to do, Eleanor. She's taken everything I've worked for and turned it into a spectacle. And Daniel, he doesn't see it. He doesn't care." Eleanor reached into her bag and pulled out a folder, handing it to Anna. "I think it's time you remembered just how much power you hold," she said, her tone firm but encouraging. Anna opened the folder to find copies of financial agreements she had signed months ago. Highlighted sections detailed her contributions to the wedding, contributions that far exceeded what she had initially remembered. Eleanor pointed to the documents. "You've paid for more than half of this wedding, Anna. Everything from the venue to the catering was made possible because of your hard work. This is your wedding, and you have every right to take it back." Anna stared at the papers, the reality sinking in. For so long, she had let Judith make her feel small and powerless. But this was proof that she wasn't just a bystander in her own life. She had a voice, and it was time to use it. Eleanor placed a hand on Anna's shoulder, her voice softening. "You don't need anyone's permission to stand up for yourself, Anna. You've already earned your place here. Now, you just need to claim it." The fire in Anna's chest reignited, pushing back the despair that had gripped her earlier. She nodded, her determination hardening with each passing second. "You're right," she said softly. "This is my wedding, and I won't let her take it away from me." Eleanor smiled, her confidence unwavering. "That's the Anna I know. Let's show her what you're made of." As the two women sat together, their heads bent over the folder, a plan began to form in Anna's mind, a plan to remind Judith and everyone else exactly who she was. Before Eleanor left, Anna picked up her phone and typed out a message. "Tomorrow, we take back what's ours." The boutique was cloaked in an uneasy silence, broken only by the soft hum of the air conditioner. Anna stood on the raised platform, her reflection framed by the flowing cascade of her ivory gown. It should have been a moment of joy, a final fitting for the dress she dreamed of, but the tension in the room was suffocating. Judith sat on a plush velvet chair in the corner, her sharp eyes trailing over Anna as if she were an imperfect piece of merchandise. Two attendants hovered nearby, their smiles strained, sensing the charged atmosphere, but wisely choosing to remain silent. Anna adjusted the veil atop her curls, her fingers trembling slightly. Judith's voice had already echoed through the fitting room more times than Anna could count. "The neckline is too low. The train is impractical. This fabric doesn't photograph well." Every critique felt like a stone added to the weight pressing on Anna's chest. But today wasn't about the dress. Today, Anna was ready for a confrontation she could no longer avoid. "Judith," Anna began, her voice calm but edged with steel, "there's something we need to discuss." Judith glanced up from her phone, her perfectly arched eyebrow lifting in faint amusement. "Oh? And what's so important that it couldn't wait until after the fitting?" Anna turned to face her, the swish of her gown brushing softly against the floor. She inhaled deeply, steadying herself. "I know what you're doing. I know about the deals you're brokering through this wedding, using it to impress your business contacts." For a moment, Judith didn't react. Then, with a dry laugh, she set her phone down and leaned back in her chair. "Anna, you really are imaginative. Let me guess, this is Eleanor's doing? That woman has filled your head with nonsense." "It's not nonsense," Anna pressed, stepping closer. "I saw the guest list. Half of these people aren't family or friends, they're business associates, and the changes you've made to the decor, the menu, they have nothing to do with Daniel and me. This isn't about our wedding, it's about you." Judith's expression hardened, the faint smile on her lips vanishing. She rose gracefully, smoothing the front of her tailored jacket as she approached Anna. Her voice was low and icy, each word a calculated strike. "You're delusional if you think I need to explain myself to you. This wedding exists because of my resources, my connections. Without me, there wouldn't even be a wedding." Anna's hands clenched at her sides, the fabric of her dress bunching beneath her fingers. "That's not true," she said, her voice steady despite the anger rising in her chest. "I've worked hard for this day. I've paid for more than you realize, and I've planned every detail, but you've twisted it into something that serves your agenda, not mine." Judith's smile returned, thinner and sharper than before. "If you can't accept how I do things, Anna," she said, her voice dripping with disdain, "then perhaps you shouldn't be marrying my son." The words landed like a thunderclap and Anna's breath hitched. For a fleeting moment, the room felt like it was spinning, the weight of Judith's threat pressing down on her chest. But she refused to let the older woman see her falter. Straightening her spine, Anna met Judith's gaze head-on. "You can't control Daniel and me," Anna said, her voice firm, unwavering. "No matter what you think, we're building a life together, a life that doesn't revolve around your schemes." Judith's expression darkened, her mask of civility slipping. "Don't be so sure, dear. People like you don't understand what it takes to survive in a family like this. You'll break before you ever belong." The attendants exchanged uneasy glances, the tension in the room becoming almost unbearable. Anna exhaled sharply, shaking her head. "I'm done here," she said quietly, stepping off the platform. Her gown swayed around her feet as she moved toward the door. "You can stay if you want, Judith, but I've made my decision." The soft chime of the doorbell marked Anna's departure as she stepped out into the warm spring air. The world outside felt too open, too vast, but she kept walking, each step bringing her closer to clarity. Judith's words echoed in her mind, but instead of breaking her, they fueled her resolve. This wasn't just about the wedding. It was about reclaiming her voice, her identity, her future. That evening, Anna sat on Eleanor's porch swing, her phone pressed to her ear. The sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving the sky streaked with amber and lavender. Anna recounted the day's events, her voice trembling with frustration. "She told me I shouldn't marry Daniel," Anna said, tears threatening to spill. "And you know what? For a moment, I almost believed her. She's so good at making me feel small." "But you're not small, Anna," Eleanor replied, her voice firm yet comforting. "And you're not powerless. Judith only has as much control as you give her." Anna exhaled slowly, letting the words sink in. "You're right. This is my life, my wedding. I've done so much for this, and I'm not going to let her take it away from me." "That's the Anna I know," Eleanor said, a smile evident in her tone. "So what's your next move?" Anna stared out at the darkening sky, her determination solidifying. "I'm going to make it clear to everyone, including Judith, that this is my day. I won't let her or anyone else ruin it." Before Eleanor could respond, faint voices drifted over the hedge separating the porch from the neighboring garden. Anna froze, recognizing Judith's clipped tone. She rose silently from the swing and moved closer, her curiosity piqued. "She's too naive to handle someone like me," Judith was saying. "The more I push, the more she'll crack. It's only a matter of time before she realizes she's out of her league and walks away. That's the only outcome I'll accept." Anna's chest tightened, each word cutting deeper than the last. But instead of breaking her, the betrayal fueled her anger, her resolve. If Judith thought she could manipulate her into giving up, she was about to learn just how wrong she was. Anna stepped back from the hedge, her mind already working. She pulled out her phone and dialed Eleanor again. "I've made my decision," she said, her voice unwavering. "This isn't just about a wedding anymore. It's about proving I can't be controlled." Her gaze shifted to the horizon, the fading light painting her face with a quiet determination. Judith had drawn the battle lines, but Anna was ready to fight. As she ended the call, her eyes fell to the folder Eleanor had given her earlier, the proof of Judith's deceit tucked safely inside. She picked it up, her fingers brushing over the incriminating documents. "This is it," she thought. "This is the key to breaking her hold." The night was still, but Anna's thoughts churned like a storm. She sat at her desk, the pale moonlight illuminating the scattered documents before her. Each piece of paper held evidence of Judith's manipulation, a story of deceit and betrayal that had gone on for far too long. Yet the weight of what she was about to do pressed heavily on her chest, making it hard to breathe. Hours ticked by in silence, and eventually, Anna found herself staring at her own reflection in the mirror across the room. Her face was pale, her eyes shadowed from sleepless nights. For a fleeting moment, she wondered if she had the strength to face Judith. The dim glow of her bedside lamp cast soft light across the room, flickering like the fragile spark of hope she clung to. She whispered to herself, "You can do this, Anna. You have to." A gentle knock at the door startled her. She turned to find Daniel standing hesitantly in the doorway. His usual confidence was gone, replaced by an expression of uncertainty and regret. "Can I come in?" he asked softly. Anna nodded, her heart tightening. It had been days since they had shared more than a few strained words, each interaction clouded by Judith's looming presence. Daniel closed the door behind him and stepped inside, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. He hesitated before speaking, his voice barely above a whisper. "I owe you an apology." Anna's breath caught. "What are you saying, Daniel?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I've been blind to what my mom's been doing. To you, to us. I've let her control so much of my life that I didn't even realize how much damage she was causing." Anna studied his face, searching for sincerity. For so long, she had pleaded for him to see what was happening, to stand by her side. And now, here he was, admitting his failure. "I've been such a coward," Daniel continued, his voice trembling. "But watching how she's treated you, how she's tried to destroy everything we've built together, it made me realize I can't let this go on. I'm sorry, Anna. I want to make this right." Anna's throat tightened with emotion, but she kept her voice steady. "I don't know if you can make it right, Daniel," she said honestly. "But if you're serious, then prove it. Help me stop her." Daniel nodded, his gaze meeting hers with determination. "I will. Whatever it takes, I'll do it." The following morning, Anna, Eleanor, and Daniel gathered around the dining table, papers and plans spread out before them. Eleanor's steady presence was a comfort, her sharp mind already working through every detail of their strategy. "We focus on the facts," Eleanor said, tapping a folder filled with evidence. "Judith has been using this wedding to cover her tracks, funneling money from the family trust to pay off her personal debts. She's counting on no one questioning her, but that ends now." Daniel's jaw tightened, guilt flickering in his eyes. "I still can't believe she would do something like this." "Believe it," Eleanor replied curtly. "This isn't just about a wedding anymore. It's about years of manipulation and control." Anna gripped her pen tightly, jotting down notes for the speech she would deliver. Every word felt like an act of defiance, a declaration of her independence. But as she wrote, her hand trembled slightly. She couldn't ignore the fear gnawing at the edges of her resolve. Sensing her hesitation, Eleanor placed a reassuring hand on Anna's shoulder. "You've got this," she said firmly. "This isn't just for you. It's for everyone she's ever hurt. You're stronger than she thinks." Anna nodded, taking a deep breath. "You're right, this isn't just about me anymore." Later that evening, Eleanor uncovered another revelation that deepened the stakes. Her brow furrowed as she scrolled through her laptop, her expression growing darker with each passing moment. "There's something else," Eleanor said cautiously. "Judith hasn't just been covering her debts. She's been siphoning money from the family trust for years, millions of dollars. If this comes out, it could ruin her." Anna's eyes widened, the weight of the revelation sinking in. The betrayal was worse than she had imagined, but it only strengthened her resolve. "I'm ready," Anna said firmly. Her voice wavered slightly, but the determination in her eyes was unshakable. "No matter what happens, I'm going to stand up to her." On the morning of the wedding, Anna stood before the mirror in her room, her reflection staring back at her. The gown she had chosen was simple yet elegant, a quiet rebellion against the extravagance Judith had tried to impose. As she adjusted her veil, a strange calm washed over her. This day would no longer be about Judith's power or Daniel's past failures. It would be about her choices, her strength, her future. Eleanor stepped into the room, her proud smile a steadying force. "You look beautiful," she said softly. "Thank you," Anna replied, meeting Eleanor's gaze in the mirror. "For everything." Eleanor placed a hand on Anna's shoulder, squeezing gently. "You've done the hard work, Anna. Now it's time to show everyone who you really are." Anna nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "Let's do this." As she turned to leave the room, she caught her reflection one last time. Her shoulders were squared, her chin held high. For the first time in weeks, she felt in control. "This is my moment," she thought to herself. "She won't take it from me." The sun sank lower on the horizon, casting the resort venue in a golden haze. Waves lapped rhythmically against the sandy shore, their soothing cadence belying the storm of tension brewing among the wedding party. Guests milled about on the manicured lawn, champagne flutes in hand, their polite smiles masking the undercurrent of unease. The decor was nothing short of extravagant, cascading floral arrangements, crystal chandeliers suspended beneath white canopies, and tables dressed in fine china and silk linens. The event was a masterpiece of opulence, a testament to Judith's meticulous control. Anna lingered at the edge of the gathering, her dress glowing softly in the evening light. Though she looked the picture of a radiant bride, the tight clench of her fists betrayed her turmoil. She caught snippets of hushed whispers from some of the guests, Judith's socialite acquaintances, the kind of people who thrived on gossip. "She doesn't seem like a fit for the Kingsley family, does she?" one woman murmured to her companion, glancing briefly in Anna's direction. The words stung, but they also ignited a spark of determination in Anna's chest. She straightened her spine, refusing to let their judgments crush her. Beside her, Eleanor placed a comforting hand on her elbow. "You've got this," Eleanor whispered. "Remember why you're here. This isn't just about Judith. It's about you reclaiming your story." Anna nodded, swallowing the knot of anxiety in her throat. Across the lawn, she watched as Judith glided from group to group, her laughter ringing out as she soaked up the admiration of her carefully curated audience. "Anna's so fortunate," Judith said, her voice carrying easily over the crowd. "Without my guidance, none of this would have been possible. I've done everything to make this day perfect for her." Anna's nails dug into her palms as she fought to maintain her composure. Eleanor leaned closer, her voice firm. "The time will come. Let her bask in the spotlight for now. Soon, it will be your turn." As the sun dipped below the horizon, the crowd filed into the grand reception tent, where the atmosphere shifted from cheerful to expectant. The air buzzed with polite anticipation as Judith stepped onto the stage, her glittering emerald gown catching the light. She commanded the room effortlessly, a queen surveying her court. "Welcome, everyone," Judith began, her voice smooth and authoritative. "Today, we celebrate the union of two remarkable individuals, my son, Daniel, and his lovely bride, Anna." Judith paused, letting the applause swell before continuing. "As you can see, this day is nothing short of perfection, a reflection of the values and standards our family has always upheld." Her gaze swept over the room, her smile brimming with self-satisfaction. She continued, her tone shifting to one of thinly veiled condescension. "Anna is truly fortunate to have been welcomed into this family. We've worked tirelessly to ensure her dreams have been realized. Every detail of this event has been carefully curated to reflect the grandeur and elegance of what it means to be a Kingsley." The applause was polite but subdued, a murmur of agreement rather than enthusiasm. Anna, seated near the front, felt her chest tighten with every word. Judith's speech was a subtle but clear declaration of her power, a reminder to everyone present that this day, like so many others, belonged to her. As Judith stepped back, basking in the admiration of the guests, Anna rose to her feet. Her gown swept gracefully across the floor as she ascended the stage, her steps deliberate and sure. The room fell silent, all eyes turning toward her. Judith's smile faltered slightly, a flicker of unease crossing her face. Anna took the microphone, her gaze steady as she surveyed the crowd. "Thank you, Judith," she began, her voice calm but firm. "That was quite a speech, but there's something I need to clarify." A ripple of murmurs spread through the room as curiosity gave way to tension. Judith straightened in her chair, her expression hardening. "This wedding is beautiful, yes," Anna continued, "but it's not the result of one person's efforts or one person's money." Her gaze locked on Judith. "In fact, the majority of this event was paid for by me." Gasps echoed across the tent, a collective intake of breath that hung heavy in the air. Judith's face paled, but before she could speak, Anna raised a hand. "I have the receipts," Anna said, her voice growing stronger with each word. She motioned toward Eleanor, who stepped forward and handed her a small folder. "Every payment, every contract, it's all here. And while we're on the topic of finances, there's something else everyone should know." Anna paused, her heart pounding in her chest. The weight of what she was about to say pressed heavily on her, but she pushed forward. "Judith has been using family funds, money meant for her children's future, to cover personal debts. She's hidden these transactions under the guise of wedding expenses, hoping no one would notice." The silence that followed was deafening. All eyes turned to Judith, whose carefully constructed facade began to crumble. "That's not true!" Judith's voice cracked as she stood, her composure shattering. "This is ridiculous! She's trying to humiliate me!" Anna held her ground, her voice calm but unyielding. "I wish it weren't true, Judith, but the evidence speaks for itself." She lifted the folder higher, her gaze piercing. Judith's voice rose, shrill with desperation. "You've ruined everything! You've made a mockery of this day, of this family!" "I'm protecting my marriage," Anna interrupted, her voice cutting through the chaos. "I'm protecting myself." The room seemed to hold its breath as Judith's fury boiled over. With one last glare at Anna, she stormed out of the tent, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. The guests whispered among themselves, their expressions a mix of shock, discomfort, and quiet vindication. Anna turned to Daniel, who had been sitting silently throughout the confrontation. Slowly, he rose to his feet and approached the stage, his expression conflicted but determined. Taking the microphone from Anna, he faced the crowd. "Anna is right," he began, his voice trembling but resolute. "I've been blind to a lot of things. I let my mother's influence cloud my judgment, and I failed to stand by Anna when she needed me most. But from this moment forward, I stand with my wife." His words hung in the air, heavy with sincerity. He turned to Anna, his eyes meeting hers with a mixture of apology and love. Anna has taught me something my mother never could. That love isn't about control. It's about trust, respect, and partnership. Tears welled in Anna's eyes as Daniel stepped closer, his hand reaching for hers. The room erupted into applause, the hesitant claps growing into a wave of support. As the applause died down, Anna glanced at Eleanor, who gave her a triumphant smile. For the first time in months, Anna felt a glimmer of hope, a sense that she had finally reclaimed her voice. Judith's absence was palpable, her once commanding presence reduced to whispers and knowing glances among the guests. As Anna and Daniel left the stage together, she felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Outside the tent, the night was calm, the moon casting a gentle glow over the waves. Anna stood with Daniel by her side, her heart full of determination. She had faced her greatest challenge and emerged stronger. The air was heavy with anticipation as the guests lingered, their conversations subdued in the wake of Judith's dramatic exit. Anna stood beside Daniel, her fingers trembling slightly as she steadied herself. Around them, the lavish decorations, towering floral arrangements, pristine tablecloths, and crystal chandeliers felt hollow, a stark reminder of how far Judith had imposed her will on their day. Anna looked at Daniel, her voice soft but resolute. "We're not letting her ruin this," she said, her tone steadier than it had been all evening. "This is our day, it's time we make it ours." Daniel hesitated, guilt and uncertainty flickering across his face. But after a moment, he nodded, determination softening his features. "You're right, let's do it our way." Anna didn't waste another second. She turned to one of the staff members nearby and gestured toward the ornate centerpieces. "Remove them," she said firmly. Picking up a napkin printed with Judith's intricate gold monogram, she paused for a moment before tearing it in half. "Simplify everything. Take it back to what we originally planned. Something real. Something ours." The staff moved quickly, pulling down the excess decorations and replacing them with the understated elegance Anna had envisioned from the start. Small, charming bouquets of wildflowers, plain white napkins, and warm string lights that transformed the space into a cozy haven. The over-the-top menu was replaced with a hearty buffet, featuring dishes that reminded everyone of family gatherings. As the transformation unfolded, Anna felt the tension in her chest ease, replaced by a quiet pride. The guests, initially surprised by the sudden changes, soon began to relax. The stiff formality of the evening melted away, giving way to genuine smiles, warm laughter, and heartfelt conversations. Small groups formed around the buffet table, where people shared stories and clinked glasses. For the first time that day, the celebration felt like a reflection of Anna and Daniel's love, a true gathering of family and friends. The peace didn't last long. The soft hum of conversation fell silent as Judith stormed back into the venue. Her sharp heels clicked against the floor, each step reverberating like a warning. Behind her, a small group of loyal supporters followed closely, their presence adding to the tension that rippled through the room. Judith's gaze swept the room, taking in the changes with barely disguised fury. She marched straight to Anna and Daniel, her voice cold and cutting. "This," she hissed, gesturing to the simplified decor and relaxed atmosphere, "is a disgrace. You've humiliated this family with your selfishness, Anna. I won't stand by and let you destroy everything I've worked for." Anna felt the familiar knot of anxiety tighten in her chest, but she refused to let it consume her. She took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and stepped forward. Her voice was calm, but carried an unshakable strength. "What you've worked for, Judith, is control. But this isn't about you. This is about Daniel and me building a life together, a life you can't dictate." Judith's face twisted in disbelief. She turned to her entourage, searching for validation. "Do you see how ungrateful she is?" she demanded. "I've done everything for this family, and this is the thanks I get?" The room was silent for a moment, the tension thick enough to cut. Then, unexpectedly, a middle-aged cousin spoke up from across the room, his voice hesitant but firm. "Judith," he said, "maybe it's time you let them live their own lives. This isn't your wedding." Judith's supporters shifted uncomfortably, avoiding her gaze. Another guest, braver now, added, "Anna's right, this day is about love, not control. You've gone too far." The murmurs of agreement grew louder, spreading through the crowd like a wave. Judith's carefully constructed facade began to crack as the people she once commanded with ease turned against her. A longtime family friend stepped forward, her voice soft but pointed. "Judith, you've been doing this for years. Maybe it's time to let go." Judith's face paled. For a moment, she looked as though she might lash out again, but the weight of the room's judgment bore down on her. She straightened her spine, masking her defeat, with a thin veneer of dignity. "If that's how you all feel," she said icily, "then I'll leave you to it." Without another word, Judith turned and strode toward the exit. The sound of the door slamming behind her echoed through the room, a punctuation mark on her retreat. For a few moments, no one moved, the silence stretching taut. Anna stepped forward, her heart racing. "I know this has been an unusual day," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "But what matters most to me is that we're all here together. This isn't about perfection or appearances, it's about love, family, and the future Daniel and I want to build." Daniel moved to her side, taking her hand in his. He looked out at the crowd, his voice steady and filled with conviction. "And I'm with her. Anna has taught me what it means to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard. I couldn't be prouder to call her my wife." The room erupted into applause. The tension that had hung over the evening finally lifted, replaced by a sense of warmth and unity. Guests clinked their glasses, toasting to the couple's courage and love as the band began to play. Daniel turned to Anna, a soft smile on his face. "Dance with me," he said, extending his hand. Anna nodded, allowing him to pull her onto the dance floor. The two of them twirled under the glow of the string lights, laughter spilling from their lips as the music swelled around them. One by one, the guests joined in, forming a circle of celebration around the couple. Later that night, Anna stepped outside, the cool ocean breeze brushing against her skin. She gazed out at the moonlit waves, her heart swelling with a mixture of relief and quiet determination. The battle with Judith had been about more than a wedding. It had been about reclaiming her voice, her independence, and her future. Daniel appeared behind her, slipping his arms around her waist. "You did it," he said softly. "We did it," Anna corrected, leaning back against him. For the first time in months, she felt like herself again. And as she looked out at the endless horizon, she knew that this was only the beginning. The family gathering room was thick with tension. Anna sat beside Daniel, her fingers clasping his hand tightly for reassurance. Eleanor stood to her left, her calm yet commanding presence grounding Anna. Across the room sat Judith, her lips pressed into a thin line, her once imposing demeanor now clouded with unease. Around her, family members exchanged hushed whispers, their eyes darting between Judith and the stack of documents Eleanor had just presented. "These," Eleanor began, her voice steady and sharp, "are records of every transaction Judith has made using the Carter Family Fund over the past 5 years. They include payments for personal debts disguised as wedding expenses, gifts for political alliances, and even a luxury vacation billed as a business trip." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle over the room. This wedding was never about Anna and Daniel. It was about Judith consolidating her power. A ripple of shock passed through the room, the reality of Eleanor's statement sinking in. Judith's fingers gripped the arms of her chair, her knuckles turning white. She leaned forward, her voice cracking with indignation. "This is preposterous! You think you can waltz in here with some papers and undermine everything I've done for this family? Everything I've sacrificed?" Anna, her voice steadier than it had ever been, cut through Judith's defense. "Sacrificed?" she repeated, her gaze unwavering. "You didn't sacrifice anything, Judith. You took my dignity, my autonomy, and the happiness of everyone in this room, all to maintain the illusion of control. Don't you see? You've hurt the very people you claim to protect." The room fell silent, the weight of Anna's words rippling through the gathered family members. Daniel turned to his mother, his expression one of quiet disapproval. "She's right, Mother," he said. "You didn't do this for the family. You did this for yourself." Judith's eyes widened, desperation flashing across her face. "You're my son," she pleaded, her tone softening. "Everything I've done was for you." Daniel shook his head, his voice resolute. "No, everything you've done was for you." The words hung in the air, heavy with finality. For a moment, no one spoke. Then, one by one, family members began to voice their own truths. An older aunt, her voice trembling with emotion, recounted how Judith had pressured her into giving up her share of the family estate. A cousin revealed how Judith had sabotaged his business partnership under the guise of protecting the family name. The stories flowed like a dam breaking, years of silence and resentment spilling out at last. Finally, a voice rose above the others, a matriarch of the family, her tone firm yet tinged with sadness. "Judith," she said, "we've stood by silently for too long. Enough is enough. This family deserves better." Judith's shoulders slumped, her once commanding presence now reduced to a fragile shell. She scanned the room, her gaze searching for a lifeline among the faces that had once supported her, but all she found were cold stares and quiet disapproval. Slowly, she rose to her feet, smoothing the fabric of her tailored jacket with trembling hands. "If that's how you all feel," she said, her voice hollow, "then I'll leave you to your lives." Her heels clicked sharply against the floor as she turned and walked out of the room. The sound of the door closing behind her echoed through the silence, a final punctuation mark on her departure. For a moment, no one moved, the weight of what had just transpired settling over them like a heavy fog. Anna exhaled slowly, a sense of relief washing over her as if she'd finally come up for air. Daniel turned to her, his eyes searching hers. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. "I will be," Anna replied, her voice steady. A small, genuine smile spread across her lips. "For the first time, I feel like I can finally breathe." Later that evening, the tension in the house began to dissipate. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold and pink, Anna and Daniel sat together on the porch, their fingers intertwined as they watched the last rays of light fade into the evening. "I think it's time for a fresh start," Anna said, her voice filled with hope. "Somewhere we can build our life together, away from all of this." Daniel nodded, his expression softening. "Wherever you want to go, whatever you want to do, I'm with you." Anna leaned her head against his shoulder, the quiet comfort of the moment wrapping around them like a warm embrace. Inside, Eleanor stood by the window, watching the two of them with a knowing smile. She raised her glass in a silent toast to Anna, pride shining in her eyes. The breeze carried the soft scent of blooming jasmine as it drifted through the porch. Anna closed her eyes for a moment, savoring the peace she had fought so hard to reclaim. When she opened them again, she looked out at the horizon, her heart swelling with the promise of a new beginning. This wasn't just the end of a battle, it was the start of something beautiful, and for the first time in years, Anna felt certain that the best was yet to come. Morning sunlight spilled through the kitchen window of Anna and Daniel's new home, painting the simple wooden countertops in soft gold. The house, nestled among towering oaks on the outskirts of Austin, was a world away from the grandeur they had left behind. The chirping of birds outside mingled with the gentle gurgle of a stream nearby, creating a soundtrack of peace that felt almost surreal to Anna. She stood barefoot by the stove, pouring steaming coffee into two mismatched mugs. Through the window, she could see Daniel on the porch, his legs stretched out, a newspaper in hand. His face, once etched with the tension of navigating his mother's expectations, now held a relaxed ease that made her smile. She picked up the mugs and stepped outside, savoring the feel of the cool morning air on her skin. "Coffee delivery," she said, handing him one of the mugs. "Thanks," Daniel replied, taking a sip. He looked up at her, his expression soft. "You seem different. Lighter." Anna leaned against the porch railing, gazing out at the trees swaying gently in the breeze. "I think I'm finally where I'm meant to be," she said, her voice filled with quiet certainty. The simplicity of their new life was a stark contrast to the carefully curated chaos they had left behind in California. There were no extravagant demands, no watchful eyes waiting to judge their every move, just the two of them, learning to live on their own terms. Anna felt a profound sense of gratitude for this fresh start, a chance to build something real. Across the country, Judith Carter sat alone in the cavernous living room of her sprawling mansion. The once bustling house was now eerily quiet, the echoes of her heels against the marble floor the only sound. The fallout from the wedding had been swift and merciless. Family members and allies, long silenced by her dominance, had distanced themselves, leaving Judith to face the solitude she had unwittingly created. On the coffee table before her lay a folded piece of stationery. For days, Judith had wrestled with whether to send the letter she had written to Anna. It wasn't an apology. Judith wasn't the kind to beg. But it was a rare acknowledgement of her faults. She had written about her fear of losing relevance, the insecurity that had driven her to exert control over the lives of those she loved. "I can't undo the damage I've done," the letter read, "but perhaps you can understand that it came from a place of fear, not malice. I've always believed that power was the only way to hold on to what mattered. Now I'm not so sure." Anna discovered the letter in her mailbox a few days later. She sat by the window, reading it in silence. When she finished, she folded it carefully, and placed it in a drawer, her decision firm. Judith's words no longer held the power to hurt her. Anna had chosen her path, and there was no room for the shadows of the past in the light she had found. That afternoon, Anna wandered down to the stream with her journal. She found a flat rock near the water's edge and sat down, the sound of the gently flowing water calming her. Flipping through the pages, her eyes landed on a quote scribbled in bold letters. "Don't let anyone else define your worth. You're stronger than you think." It was advice Eleanor had given her long ago, and it had carried her through the storm. Anna watched the water as it moved around the rocks in its path, constant and unyielding. She traced the words in her journal with her fingertips and thought, life is like this stream, always moving, always adapting, yet never losing its essence. A few weeks later, Eleanor arrived for a visit, bringing warmth and laughter that filled the house. She wasn't alone. Several family members who had stood by Anna and Daniel joined her, their arms loaded with groceries and homemade pies. That evening, they gathered on the back patio under a canopy of string lights, sharing stories and laughter. The scent of grilled vegetables and freshly baked bread mingled with the crisp evening air. As they sat around the table, Eleanor raised her glass, her eyes shimmering with emotion. "To Anna," she said, her voice steady but full of feeling, "you didn't just find your voice, you reminded us all of what it means to stand up for what's right. Henry would be so proud." Anna felt a lump rise in her throat. She reached out and squeezed Eleanor's hand, her gratitude too vast for words. "I couldn't have done it without you," she managed, her voice thick with emotion. As the evening wound down, the group parted with hugs and promises to visit again soon. Anna stood on the porch with Daniel, their arms wrapped around each other as they looked up at the stars scattered across the night sky. "We've come a long way," Daniel said, his voice soft and reflective. "But it feels like this is just the beginning." Anna nodded, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "It is," she replied, "and this time we're writing our own story." The following morning, their quiet breakfast was interrupted by a knock at the door. Anna opened it to find Alex Hayes, the architect who had helped redesign parts of their wedding venue. He held a rolled-up blueprint under one arm, his eyes sparkling with excitement. "I hope I'm not interrupting," Alex said with a grin, "but I've been working on something and I think you'll like it." Anna invited him in, curiosity piqued. Together, they unrolled the blueprint on the kitchen table. It was a design for an outdoor workspace and garden, complete with a greenhouse, a community table, and rows of wildflowers. It was exactly what Anna had envisioned, but hadn't yet found the courage to voice. "This is perfect," Anna said, her excitement evident. She turned to Daniel, who gave her an encouraging nod. Her smile widened. "It's more than I could have dreamed." Alex chuckled. "I thought it might be." Anna placed her hands on the blueprint, imagining the life she and Daniel would build in this new chapter. "Well," she said, her voice steady with determination, "I guess it's time to start planting roots." As Anna and Daniel embark on their new journey, their story reminds us of the power of reclaiming our voice and standing firm against those who seek to control us. It's a lesson about choosing love and authenticity over fear and manipulation, and about finding the courage to write your own story, no matter how difficult the path. So what about you? Have you ever had to stand up for your dreams or break free from someone else's expectations? Share your story in the comments. We'd love to hear it. And if this journey inspired you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel for more stories like this. Together, we'll keep exploring tales that move us, challenge us, and remind us of our own strength. See you in the next story.